Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the other toast. Stories like this are made to be heard, shared, and remembered. It was always the same. Every Thursday night, they'd gather in the sleek Grayson penthouse overlooking downtown Toronto. Nathan Grayson, suave, smug, and the self-proclaimed king of Novacore's operations, would pour expensive whiskey into crystal tumblers and toast with his 5 closest executives. His laughter always came first, loud and confident, as if the skyline itself bowed to him. And beside him, like a silent ghost in her own home, sat Celeste Marlowe. They thought she was nobody. Just Nathan's long-suffering wife who couldn't hold down a job. A woman with potential, but no results. Someone who barely spoke during the conversations and smiled too tightly when they joked at her expense. Tonight was no different. You know what she should try next? Connor Hale from marketing slurred slightly, swirling his drink with a smirk. Freelance life coach. I mean, she's failed at everything else. Might as well tell others how to do it. Laughter erupted. Even Nathan didn't flinch. In fact, he piled on, leaning back with his whiskey. Nah, she tried that last year. Remember the blog? 3 posts and a grand closing. They were all laughing at her. In her home. Wearing suits bought by her money. Sitting on furniture paid for by the company she built. And they had no idea. Celeste took a sip of water and nodded slightly, as if in agreement. She wore a beige knit sweater, comfortable, forgettable, and carefully chosen. Her expression never shifted. It hadn't for years. Because Celeste Marlowe had learned long ago that silence was a mask far more powerful than any retort. The walls had ears tonight. Just like they always did. What the men didn't know was that the sleek sound bar in the corner of the room wasn't just a sound system. It had been custom designed to capture high-definition audio from every corner of the apartment. The security cameras, planted discreetly during a renovation Nathan had never bothered to check, recorded every smirk, every slur, every brag about deals that skirted legal lines. But Celeste didn't need the recordings for proof tonight. She just needed the memory. Because tomorrow, everything would begin. As the party dwindled and the men filtered out to their town cars, Celeste cleaned up quietly. Nathan patted her on the shoulder like a secretary and murmured, "We'll get you a new resume done, sweetheart. Maybe something in retail." That night, after the dishwasher hummed and Nathan fell asleep in their overpriced bed, Celeste stepped into her private study. The door looked like a linen closet. Inside was another world. 3 curved monitors. A biometric lock. A wall lined with locked drawers containing files, drives, legal records. She pressed a code, and the room lit up. Novacore Solutions. A company publicly headed by board members and a visible male CEO. But the real founder. The architect behind every deal, system, and strategy. Celeste. Her hands moved quickly. She checked the timestamps. Downloaded the latest audio logs. Reviewed new footage from Peterson's body cam, the newest executive plant she'd embedded 2 months ago. His footage showed Nathan and his team during lunch at a private club, laughing as they discussed how to push out a female team lead without triggering an HR scandal. She forwarded the clip to Maya Russo, her chief of staff and only real confidant. A reply came in seconds. Got it. Clean. Building case file #M31 now. Celeste smiled faintly. It had taken her 3 years. 3 years of playing the doting wife. 3 years of building ironclad evidence. 3 years of embedding insiders, staging HR complaints, manipulating the stock buyback so that her name was buried beneath layers of shell companies. It was almost poetic. The man who prided himself on being a shark in suits worked for the very woman he mocked. And tomorrow, he'd unknowingly interview her. At 6:15 a.m., Celeste stood before the mirror in a dull navy suit. No makeup. Hair pinned into a plain bun. She looked nothing like the elegant strategist who ran board meetings through encrypted video calls as Novacore's phantom founder. She looked like a nervous woman going to a job interview. Because that was the plan. Celeste had created a fictional applicant, Emily Quinn. An alias. She forged a modest resume, curated a LinkedIn page with just enough endorsements, and scheduled a junior analyst interview through HR's backdoor system. And guess who was leading the interview panel? Nathan, Connor, and Dean McAllister from HR. Celeste arrived early and sat quietly in the lobby, clutching a faux leather portfolio and pretending to review notes. No one noticed her. They rarely did. When Nathan walked through security at 8:45, he passed right by her. His cologne lingered. She didn't even blink. Dean arrived 5 minutes later, eyes glued to his phone. "Miss Quinn," he called out eventually. She stood. Followed him. Sat through an assessment she could have done blindfolded. Watched them glance at each other. She deliberately fumbled one of the questions, giving a hesitant laugh. The panel interview followed. And they didn't hold back. "So, tell us why a woman with no tech background thinks she can survive at Novacore," Connor said, tapping his pen against the table. "I believe in learning fast," Celeste replied with forced nervousness. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold approach. Would you describe yourself as persistent or just desperate?" The humiliation was calculated. It was routine for them. They'd done this to dozens of applicants. To women who left crying. To juniors who quit after 2 weeks. And now it was their turn. Celeste smiled, soft and uncertain, and said, "Maybe a bit of both." They laughed. 30 minutes later, she was walking back to the elevator, holding the rejection in her hand before it had even been emailed. But it didn't matter. Because while they laughed, Celeste had documented every microaggression, every breach of policy, every sexist remark. And in less than 24 hours, she would no longer be Emily Quinn. She would be Celeste Marlowe. And the boardroom would never forget her name. Tomorrow was the beginning. Tonight, she would sleep like a lioness watching prey circle the fire, calm, unreadable, and ready. Ready to roar. The sun had barely lifted above the towers of downtown Toronto when Celeste arrived at Novacore's underground entrance. This time, there was no disguise. No Emily Quinn. No quiet applicant with trembling hands and false humility. Today, she walked in as Celeste Marlowe. Hair swept back in a sharp bun. Tailored charcoal gray suit. Low heels that clicked with intent on the polished floors. A slim leather briefcase in hand. And most importantly, the platinum access badge that had been locked away for 3 years. The same guards who had ignored her the day before straightened up when they saw her now. They couldn't place the face, but they sensed authority. One even reached for the elevator before she did. The elevator panel recognized her badge instantly. Top floor. Restricted access. A floor Nathan and his team believed was still under renovation for future expansion. It wasn't. Behind the frosted glass of that level was Celeste's real office. And today, it would no longer be a secret. Maya was already waiting. Boardroom's ready. Legal and internal audit teams are on standby, she said, walking beside Celeste with practiced calm. Peterson confirmed the morning briefing with Nathan and his crew is still scheduled at 10 sharp. Perfect, Celeste replied, stepping into her office. She paused only briefly, taking in the room she hadn't seen in daylight in months. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the sleek interior in gold. Her desk sat in the center, clean, elegant, and purposeful. Screens were already online. One showed live security footage from the 14th floor conference room, where Nathan and his inner circle were laughing over lattes, unaware that their last meeting had already begun. "I want everyone in place by 10:15, she said, unzipping her briefcase and laying out documents. Security escorts. NDAs. And the termination packets. No delays. Maya handed over a sleek folder. All pre-signed. Legal says they're bulletproof. Celeste flipped it open and scanned the pages. Each document bore a name. Nathan Grayson. Connor Hale. Dean McAllister. Travis Bell. Eric Monroe. And the final one, an unexpected addition, was for Dominic Lennox, a silent partner who'd been leaking internal documents to competitors for months. Celeste had proof of it all. Thanks to Peterson's body cam. Thanks to Maya's quiet audits. Thanks to her own relentless patience. She looked up at Maya. Send the message to the board. At once. It was 9:12 when Celeste walked into the private dressing suite adjacent to her office. Inside, her reflection stared back. Calm. Commanding. Unapologetic. She reached into the drawer, retrieving a simple string of white pearls, her mother's necklace. She hadn't worn it since the funeral. It wasn't about sentiment. It was a reminder. Power isn't volume, her mother had told her once. Power is clarity. At 9:50, she exited the suite and made her way to the executive hallway. Peterson met her halfway, nodding once. They're mid-discussion. James just said they need to cut half the R&D budget. Of course he did, Celeste muttered. She stopped a few feet from the door, standing just out of view. Through the crack, their voices were loud and clear. She actually showed up again. Nathan's laugh carried. Emily Quinn. God, if desperation had a face. Connor chimed in, next time, maybe let her file reports in crayon. More laughter. Arrogant. Biting. And then, Celeste pushed the door open. Silence. Immediate and complete. 6 men turned to look, blinking as if a ghost had entered the room. Nathan's jaw dropped. So. Celeste. She stepped inside, calm and precise. Good morning, gentlemen. Connor was the first to recover. Is something wrong? Are you lost or? I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, Celeste said, setting the folder on the center of the table. Nathan stood up. Honey, this is a closed meeting. She turned to him slowly. Don't call me that. Not here. Not ever again. The tone in her voice made him sit down. Peterson remained in his chair, perfectly still, perfectly aligned with her timing. Do you know what's in this folder? Celeste asked, opening the first page. Termination letters. For each of you. Effective immediately. With cause. What the hell are you talking about? Connor snapped, standing. You don't even work here. No, Celeste said softly. I own here. She tapped a tablet. Instantly, the room's screens lit up with Novacore's original incorporation documents. All bearing one name at the top, Celeste Marlowe. The silence thickened. Nathan stepped back. This is some kind of joke. No. It's 12 years of building a company, 3 years of cleaning out rot, and one perfect morning to watch it all come to light. You lied to me. Nathan shouted. All this time. I protected something you were too arrogant to appreciate, Celeste snapped. I hid who I was because I'd already survived men like you. I gave you a chance to grow. To lead. To build something worthwhile. And you used it to humiliate others, steal, manipulate, and destroy what I built. She nodded at the guards by the door. Escort them to the compliance floor. Let them sign their paperwork. You can't do this, Dean stammered, face pale. The board already knows, Celeste cut in. They've known for weeks. And they've seen everything. She tapped her tablet again. The screen shifted. Footage from parties. Staff meetings. Emails. Recordings. Voice memos. Over 100 incidents of misconduct, discrimination, insider trading, and more. Nathan turned to Maya, who had stepped into the room without them noticing. Is this real? He asked, voice hollow. Maya nodded. Very. One by one, they were let out. None of them protested now. Connor was trembling. Travis had gone pale. Eric refused to make eye contact. Dean mumbled something about suing before being cut off by Maya's glare. Only Nathan looked back. His eyes full of disbelief. You never loved me, he said bitterly. Celeste met his gaze without blinking. I loved the version of you that never existed. And then she turned away. Back in her office, she sat at her desk as the door closed behind her. The storm had landed. But this was only the eye. The real rebuilding started now. Because revenge wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Outside the Novacore tower, the world kept spinning. Delivery bikes zipped past on Bay Street. A group of interns huddled near the cafe, laughing over lattes. None of them knew what had just happened on the top floor. Not yet. But inside the building, the shift was seismic. Security badges began to deactivate one by one. Nathan Grayson swiped his card at the elevator. The panel blinked red. He tried again, harder this time, as if force could undo what had just occurred. Access denied. Must be a glitch, he muttered, turning to Dean, who was frantically tapping his phone. Connor Hale tried his at the side entrance. Nothing. Then, like a synchronized fall from grace, notifications began buzzing. Your company account has been disabled. Access to Novacore internal systems has been revoked. Termination acknowledged. NDA in effect. Nathan's hands trembled as he opened his private email. His inbox was flooded. Calendar invites gone. Cloud folders sealed. Projects archived. His name removed from every executive chain. It was real. He looked up at the marble wall in the main lobby, where a digital screen still rotated through headlines and client wins. It now read: Novacore appoints founder Celeste Marlowe as public CEO. Announces zero-tolerance restructure. The photo beneath was sharp. Celeste, standing in the boardroom, face calm, eyes focused. She wasn't smiling. He turned to the security desk. Get me back in. The guard didn't flinch. You've been removed from the directory, Mr. Grayson. I'm the VP of. You were. Please leave the premises. Nathan stood there, breathing hard, as other employees passed him with widened eyes. A few paused. Whispered. Kept walking. By noon, word had spread to every floor. They say the higher you are, the harder the fall. Nathan and his crew were now falling in public. Outside, Peterson was already on a call with the transition team. Connor's access to the marketing dashboard is down. Finance is clean. R&D is locked. Proceed with Phase 2. Marlowe wants all internal projects untouched. Inside the building, Maya walked through HR with quiet precision. A list in her hand. Names of every employee ever silenced, pushed out, or ignored. Novacore's ghosts. Some of them had cried in stairwells. Others had resigned without saying goodbye. All of them deserved to be heard now. She stopped at Dean's old office, now stripped clean. Schedule reinstatement interviews. Start with Priya. Then Andrea. Then Tara and Gwyn. Bring them home. Back in Celeste's private suite, silence filled the room. The storm outside didn't touch her here. She stood at the window, watching the streets below. Her hand rested on the back of her chair, her mind already in motion. Her phone buzzed. Private contact, Nathan Grayson. Message, * we need to talk. I deserve an explanation, *. Blocked. Another notification. This time from Maya. Subject, external reactions. Thompson Group scheduled emergency call. Summit Capital doubled shareholdings. 3 firms issued statements in support of the restructure. Former staff beginning to speak on social media. Celeste sat down slowly and opened the internal feed. A comment from a junior analyst read. *, I never thought I'd see the day. Celeste Marlowe is a legend. *. Another from a designer. *, feels like the air finally shifted in here. *. And then a message. Quiet. Simple. From someone who had left the company 3 years ago. *, thank you. For seeing what we couldn't say. *. She leaned back in her chair, letting the weight settle. Not satisfaction. Not pride. Just gravity. This wasn't revenge. It was reckoning. At 3 p.m., the second wave began. Connor Hale's LinkedIn update tried to spin it first. After an exciting journey at Novacor, I've decided to step away to explore new ventures. Celeste smiled. She knew what would follow. The official company press release dropped 15 minutes later. Novacor confirms internal investigation concluded in executive dismissals for cause. New policies prioritize safety, equity, and integrity. The headline hit every business outlet by 3:30. By 4 o'clock, Nathan tried again. He texted Celeste's personal number. *, I didn't know you were capable of this. *. She didn't reply. But Maya did. This number is no longer in service. Do not attempt further contact. All future matters will be handled by legal counsel. Later that evening, security footage showed Nathan at the gates of their home in Rosedale. His passcode didn't work. The gates stayed shut. His name had been removed from the security system. A guard emerged. You need to leave, sir. My clothes are inside. They'll be delivered tomorrow. He laughed once. Bitter. She's really doing this. She already has. That night, Celeste sat on the rooftop balcony of her penthouse suite overlooking the city. Maya handed her a tablet. Legal team finalized filings. All retaliation protections are in place. Internal audits are clean. Client responses are overwhelmingly supportive. Celeste didn't look up. And him. Still in denial. Tried calling his mother. She told him to grow up. A silence passed. Then Maya said softly, was it enough? Celeste finally turned her gaze toward the skyline. It's a start. The wind rustled the edge of her sleeve. Somewhere below, Nathan was sitting in his parked car, staring at a life he no longer belonged to. His friends had stopped answering. His phone, once constantly buzzing with meetings, was quiet. He had nothing left but memory. Of the dinners. The laughter. The jokes at her expense. He never knew she was listening. He never knew he was being measured. And now, he was locked out. Of the company. Of the home. Of the legacy he never truly owned. And the woman he thought was beneath him. She had risen higher than he'd ever dared to look. Tomorrow, the rebuild would begin. But tonight, Celeste Marlowe closed her eyes, leaned back, and let the city breathe. The doors had closed. The past had been cut off. And nothing would ever be the same again. It started with a phone call Nathan never should have made. The following morning, while Celeste was already in her second round of executive transition meetings, Nathan Grayson was dialing numbers from a burner phone in a cheap cafe 2 blocks from the Novacor Tower. He wore sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. His suit from yesterday was wrinkled. His posture was different now, shoulders curled inward, confidence dulled. He called Dominic Lennox first. "Dom. You've heard, right?" A pause. Then Dominic's voice, cold and clipped. "I heard. And I'm not taking this call." Click. Nathan tried again. "Eric. Travis. Even Dean." No one picked up. Connor finally answered on the 4th ring. "Connor. We need to hit back. Legal threat. NDA violations. False dismissal. Anything. She blindsided us." Connor's voice was quiet. Defeated. "She didn't blindside us, Nate. She outplayed us. We can't just sit here. I think we have to." Click. Nathan stared at his phone, rage growing in his chest like a pressure valve ready to burst. She had taken everything. But he wasn't done. Not yet. By noon, Nathan was in the offices of a corporate litigation firm on King Street. He had pulled strings to get the meeting, citing urgent shareholder betrayal. The receptionist looked skeptical as she led him inside. 20 minutes later, he was escorted back out. Conflict of interest. The firm had already been retained, months ago, by Novacor's board under Celeste's direction. Every other high-level firm he tried gave the same response. No capacity. Conflicts. Prior relationships. He tried to call in favors. But those who once answered quickly now took days. Some not at all. By the end of the day, Nathan sat alone on a park bench, eyes scanning headlines on his phone. Novacor founder revealed, Celeste Marlowe ends executive tenures amid internal reform. CEO's secret identity rocks tech sector. The woman behind the curtain, how Celeste Marlowe reclaimed her company. He scrolled further. Comment sections flooded with support. Then he saw it. A trending hashtag. Hashtag thank you Celeste. Nathan nearly dropped the phone. He turned his head sharply as if trying to block out the noise, but it was everywhere. He couldn't go online without seeing her name. Couldn't look at financial news without hearing about Novacor's rising stock. Even his mother called that night. "I don't want to hear from you until you apologize." To her. And to everyone you treated like a joke. Nathan said nothing. She hung up. Across town, Celeste sat in a quiet meeting room reviewing reinstatement reports. Maya entered with a tablet in hand. He tried 3 firms. All declined him. One of them emailed us a transcript of the meeting. He said you were unstable. Celeste didn't blink. He's desperate. Maya nodded. Desperation makes mistakes. Celeste turned her attention to a name on the list. Jennifer Tring. A senior developer who had been quietly pushed out 2 years ago by Travis Bell after she reported misconduct. Bring her back, Celeste said. With full salary reinstated and a leadership position. She already accepted. A small smile curved on Celeste's lips. She leaned back. How's the press doing? Managing. We're not giving interviews. Just performance metrics and policy briefs. So far, the narrative's holding. The internal messaging board was flooded with gratitude. One entry simply read, Asterisk, I used to walk on eggshells. Today I walked with purpose. Asterisk. Meanwhile, Nathan was crafting an email to the press. Subject, statement from former Novacor executive. He tried to make it sound official. That he had resigned for personal reasons. That the company was shifting focus. That his decision had nothing to do with internal events. He clicked send. The story was buried within an hour. Why? Because a leaked internal memo from Novacor's legal team followed immediately, attached to a public investor update that listed the exact misconduct that led to terminations. Anonymous sources. Dated infractions. Precise details. No rebuttal. No denial. Nathan had one move left. He created a dummy account and began leaking rumors to competitors. That Celeste had falsified records. That she had manipulated hiring. That her leadership would drive away clients. But Celeste already had a full legal team monitoring every mention of her name. And within 24 hours, the IP address was traced. A cease and desist was drafted. A digital trail preserved. A lawsuit was being prepared quietly, with a full dossier of Nathan's communications. He never saw it coming. At 2:12 a.m., while the city slept, Celeste stood on her balcony, wrapped in a long black coat, watching the skyline. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maya. Nathan attempted to contact Thompson Group tonight. Intercepted. No harm done. Celeste replied with only 2 words. He's done. And in that moment, a man who once stood at the top of an empire, who laughed at a woman he thought was beneath him, was now clawing at the edges of a world that no longer had space for him. He had tried everything. And failed at every turn. Because power doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the one who listens, waits, plans. And strikes when no one sees it coming. The first one was from 3 years ago. Subject line, female junior staff promotion, let's reconsider. Sent from Nathan Grayson to Connor Hale, with a short message, asterisk, not the right fit. She's got potential, but she's too emotional. Let's look at other options. Asterisk. It was followed by a laughing emoji. Celeste read the email silently. It was archived in a hidden folder on Nathan's former company account, one he'd never expected anyone to find. But Celeste's forensic IT team had spent the last week scouring every device he had used at Novacor, desktop, laptop, tablet, even the old conference room systems he had forgotten were still syncing data. And they were finding everything. The buried emails. The back-channel conversations. The thinly veiled discrimination tucked between sarcastic remarks. One by one, Maya and her team categorized them, time-stamped them, and added them to a growing archive labeled Internal Pattern of Bias, Grayson, Hale, Bell, McAllister. Celeste sat in her office with the lights low, the screen bright in front of her. She scrolled past another flagged exchange. Asterisk, we need a male face on the Phoenix pitch. Let's not send Andrea. Asterisk. Asterisk, can we ask her to gracefully decline the panel spot? Asterisk. Asterisk, might be too much estrogen at the table. Just saying. Asterisk. Each message read like a nail in a coffin. Each message was proof. The silence outside her door was heavy. It was late. Most of the staff had gone home, but Celeste stayed. She needed to see it all. Every word. Every moment they thought no one was watching. But she had been. And now she had it all. Maya entered quietly, a file in hand. We just uncovered something from the executive printer logs. 2 weeks ago, Nathan printed out internal strategy documents marked confidential, client, Aurora Health Systems. Celeste turned. He was trying to shop them to a competitor? Looks that way. We're confirming. Peterson overheard him referencing a side deal over drinks last quarter. I'm looping in legal. Celeste didn't answer right away. Instead, she clicked on the oldest email in the chain. Subject, *, welcome to the team. *. It was the onboarding message she had written years ago, signed under the alias of a recruitment firm. The message that brought Nathan into Novacor. At the time, she believed he was different. Driven. Charismatic, but thoughtful. She had crafted his path. He had walked it with swagger, blind to the strings above him. Now the strings were snapping, one by one. Downstairs, in a rented apartment paid for on borrowed time, Nathan sat hunched over a laptop that no longer connected to any secure network. His inbox was frozen. Every digital key revoked. But his personal account still worked. And as desperation settled into his bones, he began writing an email. Not to Celeste. To a reporter. He offered them an anonymous tip. Claimed he had documents that would reveal the dark side of the Novacor restructuring. That Celeste had manipulated internal systems. That the shakeup was personal. He attached a few blurry screenshots. Hearsay. Speculation. He hit send. And waited. The reply came 4 hours later. We've received formal communication from Novacor Legal. All relevant documentation contradicts your claim. Any published falsehoods will result in immediate litigation. The story was never published. Back at Novacor, Maya joined Celeste for a late briefing. He's getting reckless, Maya said. The digital trail is getting easier to trace. He's not even trying to cover it anymore. Celeste stared at the projection screen behind her, where the latest audit report glowed. I want you to compile everything. Every email. Every line of code. Every transfer, whisper, and warning. Let the record show how he built this house of cards. And when it's done, we'll make sure no one like him ever holds this kind of power again. The following day, the board met in full session. Celeste arrived with a thick binder. She didn't open it right away. She simply placed it on the table and said, "This is the full misconduct archive." The board members exchanged glances. I don't want a witch hunt, Celeste continued. I want transparency. I want accountability. I want everyone to know that if they cross the line, whether subtly or brazenly, they will be seen. She paused. And they will be removed. The board voted unanimously to approve a permanent ethics division with full investigative authority. They would report directly to the CEO, Celeste. An hour later, HR issued a confidential internal bulletin titled, New Standards for Accountability and Cultural Oversight. The message was clear. The old Novacor was gone. And so was the silence that once protected people like Nathan Grayson. That evening, Maya handed Celeste a final report. The subject line said everything. The emails he didn't delete, full archive complete. Celeste held the file for a moment. Not with triumph. With resolution. Nathan had built his house of influence on whispered cruelty, exclusion, and charm. He had laughed over dinner tables and spoken in boardrooms as if no one would ever dare challenge him. But now, those emails, the ones he never deleted, the ones he wrote so casually, were the foundation of his fall. And tomorrow, the next phase would begin. The public reckoning. The one he couldn't run from. The one that would live online forever. It was subtle at first. One missed callback from a longtime client. A postponed quarterly meeting. Then another. And another. By the end of the week, Nathan Grayson realized it wasn't coincidence. It was silence. Loud, intentional, organized silence. He sat in a co-working space he could barely afford, refreshing his inbox every few minutes. The outreach emails he had sent to former Novacore clients, his old contacts, the ones who used to laugh at his jokes and sign contracts over wine, remained unopened. Or worse, marked as read with no reply. And then came the replies. Polite. Distant. Lethal. At this time, we have no interest in engaging further. After reviewing internal reports from Novacore's recent executive restructuring, we will be reassessing all past communications and vendor relationships. Please direct all future correspondence to our legal team. Nathan felt his chest tighten. He tried the Thompson Group next. The crown jewel. His pride. He left a voicemail. Then two. Finally, he called from a private number. Hello? A clipped male voice answered. Mr. Thompson. It's Nathan Grayson. A pause. Ah. Yes. I'd like to schedule a conversation. I don't think that will be necessary. Look, whatever you heard. We heard everything. The recordings, the transcripts, the behavior. You were reckless. And dishonest. Nathan's throat dried. I built that account. You abused it, Thompson replied coldly. Celeste saved it. Click. Just like that, the door closed. Back at Novacore's headquarters, Celeste sat in the penthouse boardroom across from 3 representatives from Aurora Health Systems. A week ago, they had been wary. Watching. Waiting to see how the fallout would affect service delivery and operations. But today was different. Today, Celeste walked them through a detailed reform plan. Updated ethical guidelines. Rebuild client service protocols. New leadership placements, including women and marginalized team members who had once been sidelined. She concluded her presentation with a single sentence. No one here will ever be treated as expendable again. The lead executive, a seasoned woman in a burgundy blazer, nodded slowly. I've been in this business a long time, Ms. Marlowe. I've seen men like Nathan come and go. But I've rarely seen someone take them down without burning the company to the ground. We're not burning anything, Celeste said. We're rebuilding it. Stronger. You'll have our continued partnership. When the Aurora team left, Maya stepped in with a folder. Weekly report. 11 new client renewals. 4 expansion contracts. And she handed over a smaller file, a private email from Goldman Chase Capital. They want to meet with you directly. Celeste raised an eyebrow. Not with Novacore. No. With you. By the end of the day, the Novacore client roster looked different. Cleaner. Stronger. And Nathan. He was watching it all happen from the outside. He tried one last desperate move. A video call with a startup he had once mentored. Young founders. Hungry for guidance. He thought maybe, just maybe, they'd bite. But as the call began, he saw a 4th participant quietly log in. A woman in a dark blazer with a Novacore logo behind her. Maya. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The founders thanked Nathan for his time. Then ended the call. Celeste had moved fast, quietly securing non-compete enforcement, reputation bulletins, and private memos sent to major accounts. Not revenge. Strategy. Because clients don't just leave on their own. They walk away when they finally see the truth. And now they had seen it. In full color. Nathan received one final notification that night. A forwarded copy of Novacore's internal newsletter. Subject line, Rebuilding Trust, one client at a time. A quote from Celeste was featured at the top. Asterisk, what we lost in arrogance, we are regaining in integrity. Asterisk. Below that, a list of newly promoted project leads. Half of them were people Nathan had once ignored. Dismissed. Belittled. And now, they were running the very departments he once ruled. He stared at the screen for a long time. He didn't rage. Didn't shout. He just sat there, watching the world he used to command turn its back on him. One client at a time. Until nothing remained. Nothing but silence. And Celeste's voice, echoing in the headlines. The voice of the woman he thought would never be heard. The room was silent when Celeste entered. Not out of discomfort. Out of respect. The boardroom at Novacore's headquarters had always felt like a cold, impersonal space. 12 leather chairs. A long, polished table. A city skyline stretching behind glass. But today, something felt different. For the first time in the company's history, the board members stood as she entered. They had never seen her like this. Not through a screen. Not through prepared statements or quarterly videos. In person. Present. Powerful. Celeste Marlowe didn't walk in with ego. She didn't need it. She walked in with data. With results. With proof of what she'd done in 6 weeks that no one else had accomplished in 6 years. The board chair, Gregory Tanaka, cleared his throat and gestured to her seat at the head of the table. Ms. Marlowe, he began, thank you for joining us. Celeste took her seat and opened her leather binder. Let's begin. Maya stepped forward and connected a live dashboard to the conference screen. Instantly, the room filled with glowing metrics. Employee satisfaction up 61%. Client retention up 38%. Revenue forecasts adjusted upward by 12%. 0 HR complaints reported since restructure. 7 former high potential employees reinstated. 4 already promoted, ***. Gregory raised an eyebrow. These numbers, are they verified? Internally and externally, Maya said. Audit teams cross-checked them with third-party evaluators. All clean. A second board member, Ruth Everly, leaned forward. I have to say, I didn't believe it at first. We've had founders try to stay invisible before. It never ends well. Celeste looked at her calmly. I wasn't invisible. I was strategic. The old leadership culture was so corrupted, a clean slate wasn't possible without removing the virus at the root. The board nodded, slowly, thoughtfully. Another member, James Alford, asked, and the backlash? Celeste smiled faintly. Which part? Ex-employees. Legal threats. Press. All neutralized, she said. Their contracts had airtight clauses. The lawsuits were bluffs. We prepared our response campaigns a year in advance. If they escalate, we escalate harder. They know that now. Gregory folded his hands. And Nathan Grayson? Celeste answered without emotion. He's finished. No leverage. No audience. No future in our sector. There was a long pause. Then Ruth sat back and said, you know what surprises me most? Celeste raised her eyes. That you never once came to us for permission. You simply took back what was already yours. Celeste closed her binder gently. I didn't need permission. I needed timing. And a little silence. The room stayed quiet. Then Gregory cleared his throat again. We've reviewed your proposal for a cultural transformation division. We've also read the staff-wide letters you sent. Powerful words. Honest words. You've earned more than our trust. He paused. You've earned our vote. He looked around the table. One by one, the board members nodded. Unanimous. Gregory stood. Effective immediately, you are no longer a ghost in this room. Celeste Marlowe, you are the recognized, named, and permanent Chief Executive Officer of Novacor Solutions. Applause echoed through the room. For the first time, not a single hand hesitated. Celeste stood slowly. Not with surprise, but with quiet dignity. Thank you, she said. Not just to them, but to the moment. To the journey. To the years of listening and waiting. Ruth approached her after the meeting as others filtered out. I have a daughter, she said quietly. She's 28. She's smart. She's passed over constantly by men who look the part but don't have the depth. Celeste listened. Ruth smiled faintly. Today, I'm going to call her. And tell her what I saw. A woman who didn't fight for a seat. She built the whole damn table. Celeste's eyes softened. Tell her she's not alone. And not to wait for anyone to offer her a chair. Later that afternoon, Maya joined Celeste in her office with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. No press release. Maya teased. Celeste shook her head. Let the results speak. Maya poured. To the board that finally saw you, she said. Celeste raised her glass. To the board that finally saw what was there all along. They drank. The sun dipped behind the skyline, casting the room in gold. Outside, Novacor buzzed with new energy. Departments were thriving. Innovation was blooming. And the old ghosts had been swept away. No longer whispers. No longer doubt. Celeste Marlowe had stepped into the light. Not to take power, but to show she had always owned it. It came in an unmarked envelope. No name on the front. No return address. It was slipped under the door of Celeste's private office late one evening, so quietly that neither Maya nor the night security team noticed. Celeste found it the next morning. She paused as she picked it up. The paper was heavyweight. The fold, precise. Whoever sent it wanted her attention. She closed the door behind her, sat at her desk, and opened it carefully. Inside was a single-page document. Typed. Anonymous. But powerful. Subject, pattern of systemic suppression. It wasn't a complaint. It wasn't a threat. It was a list. 12 names. Dates. Departments. Termination justifications that all followed the same pattern: vague, lack of culture fit, communication issues, disruptive personality traits. 11 of the 12 were women. The 12th was a man who had submitted a formal HR complaint against Connor Hale for verbal harassment. None of them had returned after being pushed out. Celeste's pulse slowed as she read each line. These were the ghosts. The ones she hadn't reached yet. The ones Nathan and his circle had erased not with rage, but with silence. With paperwork. With policies dressed up in legal language that disguised malice as management. At the bottom of the page was a short note. Asterisk, you cleaned house. But the foundation is still cracked. Please find us. Before we disappear for good. Asterisk. No signature. Just the truth. Celeste folded the page gently and placed it on her desk. Then she stood. And began to make calls. By noon, Maya had built a full database from archived HR files. With the help of 2 reinstated data analysts, they traced exit interviews, performance reviews, and internal escalation logs. The pattern was undeniable. Dozens of quiet terminations. Staff labeled as uncooperative, not aligned with culture, or resistant to feedback. In reality, they had pushed back against unethical decisions, raised red flags, refused to stay silent. And for that, they were erased. Celeste sat in the war room surrounded by files and digital records. The whiteboard was covered in names and arrows, an interconnected web of internal bias, manipulation, and retaliation. "This goes deeper than we thought," Maya said. "They didn't just run a toxic culture," Celeste replied. "They made it policy." A long silence followed. Then Celeste said, "We're going to fix this." Over the next 72 hours, NovaCorp launched an unprecedented internal campaign called Operation Recovery. All previous employees terminated under flagged conditions were contacted. Privately. Personally. Not with legal letters. With letters of acknowledgement. Invitations to meet. Apologies. Real ones. Celeste sat down and recorded a message for each of them. Not generic. Personalized. She read their files. Remembered their contributions. Reflected on what they had built before being cast aside. Some didn't reply. Some asked for time. But most, they responded. Tears. Anger. Gratitude. Relief. One former employee named Alina wrote back. "I cried when I read your message. I thought I had imagined it all. The gaslighting, the isolation. I thought it was my fault. Thank you for proving it wasn't." Celeste read the line twice. Then whispered, "No one should carry that alone." A week later, NovaCorp hosted a closed-door gathering in the 18th floor conference center. They called it The Return. 12 former employees walked through the glass doors. The silence was reverent. They were greeted not with applause, but with sincerity. Celeste stood at the front of the room. She looked them in the eyes, one by one, and said, "I didn't get to protect you then. But I see you now. And I'm asking if we can start again." Some nodded. Some cried. All stayed. Later that evening, Maya approached Celeste in her office. She held up the envelope. "We ran the fingerprints. The person who sent the list was one of the 12. Celeste nodded slowly. "They lit the match. And you built the fire." Celeste placed the envelope in her private archive. She didn't need to know who sent it anymore. What mattered was that it had broken the final silence. That someone, somewhere, still believed enough to speak up. And that Celeste had heard them. Really heard them. The next day, NovaCorp updated its mission statement. It no longer included vague promises about innovation and excellence. Instead, it said this. "We listen. We correct. We rise." It was simple. It was honest. And this time, it meant something. Because behind every system, behind every statistic, there are people. And when the silence is broken, the healing can begin. Nathan Grayson hadn't planned to watch it. But he did. He told himself it was curiosity. A morbid impulse. Like watching a car crash. But deep down, it was something darker. He hoped she'd stumble. Say the wrong thing. Look uncertain. He was hoping, even now, that she might fail. Instead, she stood in front of 26 cameras, 200 reporters, and thousands of live-stream viewers without blinking. The NovaCorp press conference was held in the atrium of the newly renovated headquarters, a towering glass lobby filled with morning sunlight and polished marble. The world was watching. And at the center of it stood Celeste Marlowe. For the first time, publicly. Not behind a title. Not under an alias. Not through a spokesperson. Her. Real. Present. Unshaken. She wore a slate gray suit with a single pin on her lapel, the Novacore emblem she had designed over a decade ago on a napkin at a corner cafe. Maya stood behind her, silent and strong. The new heads of engineering, HR, and ethics flanked the stage. And before her, a sea of lights and lenses. Celeste stepped to the podium. "Good morning," she began. "My name is Celeste Marlowe. I'm the founder and CEO of Novacore Solutions. This is the first time I'm addressing the public as myself." A soft ripple of camera clicks filled the air. Many of you are here because you've heard fragments of our story. Some of it true. Some of it speculative. Today, I'll offer you something rare in this space, clarity. She paused. Then continued, calm and precise. For 3 years, I remained behind the curtain. Not because I was weak. Not because I lacked the skills to lead. But because I was studying the very culture I had mistakenly allowed to fester within the company I built. She looked directly at the front row, where the financial press sat. I created Novacore with a vision. A company driven by data and ethics. A place where merit mattered more than charisma. Where brilliance didn't need to shout to be seen. Her voice remained steady. That vision was corrupted by people I trusted. People who valued power more than people. Influence more than integrity. I let them believe I was invisible. I let them underestimate me. And then I took back what was mine. Whispers swept through the crowd. Some scribbled furiously. Others simply stared. She went on. In the last 60 days, we've terminated senior executives for documented misconduct, reinstated wrongfully dismissed staff, doubled client retention, and rebuilt our leadership structure to reflect not just skill, but equity. She gestured to the team behind her. Today, I'm announcing 3 major initiatives. 1. A permanent internal accountability division, empowered to audit every department without interference. 2. A public-facing transparency report, published quarterly, outlining all ethical and cultural metrics. And 3. A leadership pipeline program designed specifically for those historically silenced in this industry. She paused again. Not for applause. For effect. For anyone who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told to wait your turn, this is your place. The room went silent. Then, the first hand went up. A journalist from the Toronto Ledger asked, "Ms. Marlowe, what would you say to those who argue this is revenge?" Celeste didn't flinch. This isn't revenge. This is restoration. Another reporter asked, "What about Nathan Grayson? Any comment on the allegations against him?" Celeste met their eyes. "I will not spend time discussing people who built their legacy on silence and fear. We're building something new. Something clean." She stepped back. A storm of flashbulbs erupted. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself a full breath. Outside the building, Nathan sat in a coffee shop across the street, hunched over a chipped mug. The press conference played on a mounted TV with subtitles. The patrons inside cheered. He saw her name trending again. Hashtag Celeste Unmasked. Hashtag She Built It. Hashtag Leadership Redefined. He opened his phone and pulled up an email draft he had written the night before. Subject, request for a meeting, from Nathan Grayson. But he never sent it. Because what would he say? That he didn't know. That he hadn't seen it coming. That he had built a throne on sand. Instead, he watched in silence as Celeste exited the building to a crowd of employees applauding her, not because they were told to, but because they believed. She didn't wave. She didn't pose. She walked forward. Through them. With them. Nathan lowered his head. In the reflection of the coffee shop window, he saw himself. Smaller. Older. Forgotten. And her. She was everywhere. Not just on the screen. But in the spirit of every person who ever walked away from abuse and decided to rise. She hadn't just taken back a company. She'd rewritten what leadership looked like. And the world was watching. It arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Not by email. Not through a lawyer. But by hand. A plain white envelope, delivered by a private courier, signed for at the front desk of Nathan Grayson's modest rental apartment in a fading midtown complex. No logo. No wax seal. Just his name, written in neat, deliberate handwriting across the front. He stared at it for a long time. Not because he was afraid of what was inside. But because, for the first time in weeks, he wasn't invisible. Celeste Marlowe had sent him a letter. His fingers trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of cream paper, embossed at the top with a minimalist symbol. The Novacore emblem. No formality. No, dear Nathan. Just her words. Straightforward. Unapologetic. You asked for answers. You don't deserve them, but I'll give them anyway. Asterisk not because you're entitled to closure. But because I am entitled to truth, asterisk. Asterisk you once told me I was the background of your success story. The quiet woman who let you lead. Asterisk. Asterisk you never understood. I wasn't silent because I was small. I was silent because I was studying you, asterisk. Asterisk every dinner. Every meeting. Every time you spoke over someone smarter than you, more qualified than you, more human than you, asterisk. Asterisk you believed charisma equaled intelligence. That charm erased cruelty, asterisk. You were wrong. Asterisk you thought I didn't see the emails. The jokes. The hallway whispers, asterisk. I did. Asterisk you thought I'd fall apart when you laughed at me. That I'd break when you bragged to your friends about carrying me, asterisk. Asterisk I didn't break. I built, asterisk. I built a company while you mocked the blueprint. I built trust while you undermined potential. I built a future while you clung to the past. Asterisk you don't know what it's like to survive being erased by people who smile to your face. But I do, asterisk. And now, so do you. You are living in the silence you created. Every client who won't return your calls. Every colleague who deleted your number. Every door that no longer opens when you knock. That silence is your legacy. I don't write to hurt you, Nathan. Asterisk I write so you understand, asterisk. Asterisk power isn't taken. It's revealed, asterisk. You never had it. You just borrowed mine. Celeste. Nathan read the letter twice. Then a third time. And when he finally folded it again, the weight of it hit him harder than all the lawsuits, terminations, and headlines combined. It wasn't rage. It wasn't vengeance. It was clarity. And it was absolute. He placed the letter on the counter and walked to the window. Outside, life moved on. The world hadn't stopped for his fall. Novacore was preparing for another product launch, trending again in every major tech publication. Celeste had been profiled by 3 international magazines. One of them had dubbed her the quiet architect. Nathan closed his eyes. In all his years chasing titles, contracts, and corner offices, he had never built anything lasting. Only noise. Only flash. Only shadows. And now, he had to live in them. Back at Novacore, Maya stepped into Celeste's office with an envelope in her hand. Courier returned. Confirmed delivery. He signed for it. Celeste didn't look up from her desk. Thank you. No response. Celeste finally looked up. He won't send one. Maya raised an eyebrow. And if he does? Celeste returned her focus to the report in front of her. We won't answer. That evening, Celeste walked through the 12th floor hallway, the department once run by Travis Bell. Now it was a new open-concept collaboration space, bustling with soft conversation and quiet energy. She stopped at the wall where employees had begun pinning anonymous notes, stories, reflections, names of people who inspired them. At the center was a note written in faint pen. Asterisk, I stayed because someone finally saw me. Asterisk. Celeste smiled slightly. Behind her, the floor buzzed with the kind of sound that used to be rare in this building. Belonging. She walked on. Not because she had something to prove, but because there was still more to build. Not in spite of the silence that once surrounded her, but because of it. Because power had never been about noise. It had always been about who kept going. And she was still going. The sun rose gently over the Toronto skyline, casting a soft golden hue across the glass of the Novacor building. Inside, the hallways were quiet, early, but not empty. A low hum of anticipation moved through each floor like the first notes of a long-awaited song. Today was different. Today wasn't about restructuring. It wasn't about firing anyone. It wasn't about revenge. It was about honoring something older. Something deeper. Legacy. Celeste Marlowe stood in front of the mirror in her private office, adjusting a small silver pin on the lapel of her navy blue blazer. It wasn't the Novacor logo. It was something else. A tiny wrench. Polished. Subtle. Her father's symbol. He had been a mechanic. Ran a modest repair shop on the west side of town. He never made much money. But what he built with his hands and his integrity shaped everything Celeste believed in. You don't walk away from broken, he once told her. You fix it. He had died before Novacor launched. He never saw the empire she built. Never saw the betrayal. Never saw the fire that came after. But today, she would make sure he was remembered. The company had gathered in the main auditorium, a high-ceilinged space lined with exposed beams and soft, warm light. Hundreds of chairs. Standing room in the back. No stage lights. No grand production. Just people. Employees. Partners. Families. And at the center of it all, a newly constructed plaque on a marble pillar. The Marlowe Initiative, for those who build from nothing. Celeste stood before the crowd, hands resting gently on the podium. She didn't speak from notes. She didn't need to. When I was 9, she began, I stood in a garage on a rainy Saturday while my father rebuilt the same engine 3 times. It kept failing. Parts were wrong. Timing off. He could have quit. She paused. He didn't. He said, if you give up on the engine, the car never runs. But if you keep trying, one day, it starts. The room was quiet. This company is an engine. Some days, it stalled. Some days, we failed. But we didn't give up. And today, Novacor starts again. She turned slightly, revealing a photo draped next to the plaque. A man in a mechanic's jumpsuit, grease on his hands, smiling beside a tiny girl holding a toy wrench. Her father. Her. Gasps echoed. Then a wave of stillness. This space, she said, is for builders. For the overlooked. The underestimated. The ones who are told they don't belong in boardrooms because they wear uniforms or speak with calloused hands. She turned toward the plaque. Every year, this initiative will fund scholarships, career mentorship, and startup grants for people who remind me of him. People who fix what's broken and build what others call impossible. Maya stood to the side, arms crossed, her eyes misty. So did Jennifer Trin and half a dozen other reinstated team leads. People who had once been driven out were now watching a woman rewrite the blueprint of corporate power, not with threats or fear, but with memory, purpose, and quiet thunder. The applause came slowly at first. Then grew. A standing wave. But Celeste didn't smile for it. She looked at the plaque one more time. And whispered, so only she could hear. I didn't forget. Later that evening, Celeste sat on the rooftop terrace of her office, the city lights flickering like stars beneath her. She held a worn leather notebook in her hands. Her father's. Inside were scribbles. Quotes. Measurements. Notes about engines. And sometimes, notes about life. One page had been marked in red ink. It read. Asterisk, fix what breaks. Protect what matters. Never let them tell you who you are. Asterisk. She traced the words with her finger. Her phone buzzed. Maya's message popped up on the screen. Launch metrics exceeded. The Marlowe initiative is trending globally. The tech sector just blinked. Celeste set the phone down without replying. She didn't need headlines. She didn't need praise. She just needed this moment. This quiet. This breath. This proof that you can burn it all down, and still choose to build something better with the ashes. Not to show them. But to show yourself. Because power without purpose is noise. And she had never been about noise. She was about engines. And today. It started. And somewhere, if the universe allowed such things. Her father was nodding. Proud. Silent. Present. As she finally became not just the CEO of Novacor, but the woman she had always meant to be. Whole. Heard. Home.